Hello and welcome to Toneless Painting with M. Francis McCarthy. This is your painter in residence, M. Francis McCarthy. And we are in day 10 of 25 Days of Tonalism. The study that we are doing today is painted after George Inness, and the title of his painting was Moonrise. And those of you that have followed the blog will be aware George Inness, my favorite painter, and one of the most unique and idiosyncratic painters ever that's ever come on this planet, and a huge influence on me. But I have to say, even though George Inness has been such a huge influence, he's quite difficult to replicate his style. Well, not just his style, but if you were to do fake George Innes's, there are some certain tropes that he would do, but for the most part, if you were trying to do what he did in his best work, it's be very almost impossible. I mean, you could paint like he did. I mean, you can glaze and texture and do whatever, but you may or may not actually succeed at creating something that looked like a George Inness painting. So that's been my experience, and not that I've actively really set out to do that, but um, I am very, very familiar with this work. And this painting, Moonrise, is one I came across last year sometime when working on the 100 Days. I wasn't familiar with it before, and it's not one of his stronger paintings. However, it really has a lot of appeal, and I can say when I had the study in my studio, a lot of people commented on it. It really caught their eyes. You'll see that this video is not even really sped up all that much, probably about 4 times faster than I actually painted it. There's not a lot to this painting. It's very simple. It's very simple shapes, and not a lot of detail, and things are just implied, and it's actually super effective. And I really got a lot out of this study. And in my own work, I'm trying to this year. My goal, I think, is to simplify things a bit more than I have, and to go with the bigger shapes and simple planes of color and texture, and let those tell the story if and where I can. A lot of times that's dependent on the subject matter that you're trying to get across. But even with it's ultimately in fact, you can tell this is probably a synthetic picture out of George Inness's imagination here. The thing that you need to keep in mind with George Inness is that he was passionate about landscape painting his entire life. And he started out doing this super hyper detailed Hudson River School type of stuff, and was very influenced by the old masters as well. It wasn't until the end of his life that he jumped into these major simplifications that he did. And he could paint from his imagination pretty easily, because he'd had 50 years of landscape painting under his belt by that point. So you end up with a vocabulary that you can access, and that's exactly what he did. I will say, not everything that George Inness did is great. And when he failed, he sometimes failed spectacularly. And not only that, but he had a tendency of painting over his own paintings. So in some cases, the final painting that we're looking at um, may have 20 different paintings underneath it that he did at various times. And the sad fact is that some of those might have been actually superior to the one that ended up being on top. He was working off of inspiration, and he did work hard as well, but uh, he was going for something special, some special quality in his work, and he would do whatever he had to try and get it. But he did fail, and this is one of the things that I take some solace in when with my own work, because I fail too. And you know, granted, our failures are going to look better than the work of somebody that had never picked up a brush, but it's disheartening on one hand. On the other hand, you're fighting the good fight, and you're gonna you're gonna get up the next day and go after it again. And then when you've succeeded, all you really want to do is do another painting and get something else great across. It's different in some way. It's not like you're sitting there trying to paint the same painting over and over and over. That's a trap a lot of artists fall into, especially once they get some financial success, and the market has made it clear to them what type of pictures the market wants. And if this is in line with what the artist is trying to do, then that's wonderful. If it's conflicting with that, then hopefully you don't have a family to support or something. You can concentrate on your art and hope that art history will pick up on what you were doing at some point down the road. And that's something that I think every artist should keep in mind. If they're a serious professional artist, if you're not a serious professional artist, then don't worry about art history. It'd be stupid to do so. I don't know if stupid's a word. It's just maybe just a waste of time. I mean, it's like it'd be like a fantasy. If you're a serious artist who's really going after it and fighting the good fight, then art history should be what you're working for. You should be knowing where you stand in regards to art history, and what you think is important about the genre of painting that you're going after, and and where the high watermarks were and are, and you should be shooting for them, and if you can, if it's at all possible, to try and surpass them in your own unique way. And so what I'm talking about is not so much just comparing yourself to other people all the time. I'm not really coming from there at all. What I'm saying is that if you're being honest with yourself and you're trying to communicate in a certain genre of painting, then you would be knowing, hopefully, what is great about what's come before, and you do need to measure yourself against that, and you do need to try and move it forward in your own unique voice. And that's all that any of us as artists can really hope to do. I mean, there's other things that can come along. I mean, like financial success I just mentioned a little while back, or perhaps you'll have some sort of fame in your own time. The thing is about fame in one's own time is all the time I'm reading, like currently reading a book by Dale Carnegie, and he's mentioning all these very popular authors from when he wrote his book, which is like probably 1930 or so. And we don't hear about these people. We don't know them. We know people like Dickens and stuff. He's made it. We know people like Victor Hugo, and other significant writers that may not have been the most popular in their own time, but their work has risen to the top of literary history. And I like to think that the history of visual art is very much the same. I like to think that there's so much absolute garbage that's promulgated now that I do despair. I feel that modern art was very, what we call modern art, abstract art, was a necessary movement and a necessary change that came along into the world of fine art. But it's gone so far that a lot of, once your goal is to destroy meaning or obfuscate meaning, then after you've destroyed something that has some meaning to people from the generation before, you really have nothing else to destroy. So that's the dilemma I see with a lot of modern abstract art, and art that is based on concepts as opposed to say a physical object that is a representative image of some type. And actually, I'm not dissing abstract art. You could do an amazing abstract painting. I'm a big fan of, for example, of people like Franz Klein and Gerhard Richter, and even late period Willem de Kooning and stuff. So don't think I don't like abstract art, but it's much harder to do. It's much harder to succeed when you're creating abstract art, and that's just something to keep in mind. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Geoerge Inness, look him up. He's all over the internet. You can't miss him. There's several great books. If you go to even Amazon, you can pull up amazing books about Inness that are quite cheap. I've gotten several for like $8. Anyway, I can see we're getting close to the end here. Thanks for joining us today. And we'll see you next week with day 11 of 25 Days of Tonalism. And we'll also see you tomorrow with a video and blog post featuring one of my own works. Meanwhile, take good care and stay out of trouble.